All right, let's get into this discussion. In an effort to address the housing crisis in the province, Western Cape Premier Winde and Provincial Infrastructure MEC Tertuis unveiled the first of three mixed-use developments meant to open doors for lower income and middle-income families. The intervention comes as concerns mount around the so-called digital nomads, who are believed to be the driving force behind surging accommodation in Cape Town. We hear the position right now of a lobby group in Ndifuna Ukwazi. Joining us now, of course, is Booi, who's the head of political organizing and campaigns at the organization. Buhle, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us and for being back on the show. Okay, so before we even get into the issue of these digital nomads and really what it means, because I think, you know, we need to explain it to everybody, not assume that everyone knows what we're talking about. But what do you make of this first of this low to middle income housing projects that was launched this week by the government?
No, greetings, Naledi, and to your viewers at home, and thank you for inviting us to the show. We think that it is very important that we provide context in terms of the announcement that is made by Premier Winde and Tertuis, in terms of the inner city affordable housing that they've announced. You'd know, Naledi, that in Cape Town in particular, there hasn't been a single unit of affordable housing or social housing that has been built in the city center since the dawn of democracy. So we welcome the announcement that has been made by Tertuis that they will develop 3 parcels of land to social and affordable housing in the city center of Cape Town. We think that it is a step in the right direction, but we're optimistically cautious about these announcements because we know that parcels of land in this province go to die. They remain undeveloped. And this is particularly true because if you look at budget allocation from national government, only 2% of the less than 2% of the allocation from human settlements goes to social housing, which means that then there's a crisis in terms of developing at scale social housing in the province, in fact, across the country. So that's there's a fiscal challenge that we're facing in terms of development of social housing. So we hope that these announcements will not be ceremonial announcements, but there will be actual developments because people are not interested in pipeline projects because for far too long, people in Cape Town have been made promises about parcels of land being released. The mayor of Cape Town, or rather in 2017, the city of Cape Town released about 11 sites in Woodstock, and none of those sites have been developed to date. So people are not interested in pipeline projects. People are interested in actual homes and roof over their heads.
Yeah.
And we hope that that the government would actually develop these sites.
Because even if we look at the announcement this week by the Premier and certainly by Tertuis, and if we sit with that particular issue, you say, we don't want to see pipeline projects, we want to see implementation. And then there's also the issue of capacity, right? Just how much space is going to be given, how many low to middle income people or residents are going to be accommodated. And I imagine that there's a great need, but will they fill that need?
Of course, there's a crisis, Naledi, of 3.7 million people in this country that are on the so-called waiting list. And I've said this before, that number is growing at 178,000 annually. Particularly the province like the Western Cape has more than 600,000 people that are on the so-called waiting list, waiting for housing. Now, the sites that have been, or rather announced to be released for potential development, one of them is Lolo, which will give us about 850 units of housing, and the other sites will also contribute a fair share of units in terms of social and affordable units. And some of those sites will be going to market with market-related housing, which not many people can afford, but those will be used to cross-subsidize the low-income earners. But I think it's important to say that part of what we've proposed as Ndifuna Ukwazi in terms of how public land should be used and be used optimally to deal with the crisis of housing is that last year we launched a campaign that is called Land for People, Not for Parking. And what we're saying here is that there are 4 parcels of land in the city center of Cape Town that could be used for housing, that could yield more than 2,000 homes. And one of those parcels is the Parliament parking lot that is used now where there's a marquee or a tent that is used as parliament. And we've been saying that these 4 sites combined could yield about 2,000 homes for the people of Cape Town. And part of those sites are owned by the provincial government. 3 of them are owned by the provincial government. And they've used more than 73 million rands of taxpayers' money to build a car storage in Maitland. And they've even moved the cars. And cars in Cape Town today, government cars in these garages, are gathering dust, and they have roof over their heads. And there are more than 600,000 people that do not have a place to call a home. But the sites are not being used for what they're meant for. They're skewed priorities. And we are saying that these are the solutions, these sites are the solutions to at least help to make a dent in the housing crisis that we have.
Yeah.
But of course, a provincial government that is not solution orientated in terms of using public parcel of land for its social value.
Yeah, you talk about market, and that even the announcement made is also, it's really going to be subsidized, but still priced very much at market value, which is, and this is really what I want to break down here, because market value and what it looks like in Cape Town in comparison with anywhere else in the world, some would say worlds apart. I mean, you talk about parking. I think about a few years ago when there was a parking bay that was selling for 1.5 million rand, a parking bay, right? So when we're talking about property prices and certainly what they look like, and then you add in the element of digital nomads, talk to me about what that's doing to price people out.
Naledi, sorry. Cape Town, it is very expensive to live in Cape Town. It is, the rentals here are very exorbitant and ridiculous. And that's why we've been calling for more allocation to social housing, so that low-income earners can at least have places to call a home. And you find a situation where ordinary citizens are priced more than private sectors. For instance, we had a situation here in the city of Cape Town where public parcels of land, your Mobile golf courses, your Roundabout golf courses, were leased at less than 1,000 rand per year, right? And an ordinary citizen has to pay more than 12,000 for a bachelor apartment in the city of Cape Town. So there's that crisis that is there. But also the digital nomads don't make things any easier for people. For currently in the city of Cape Town, more than 14,000 full homes are being lost to digital nomads, to short-term rentals, when there's a crisis of more than 600,000 people that are in need of housing. And what happens is that prices are then inflated, and we lose home that could be used as long-term rentals for people that are in need of housing, but we lose these to digital nomads, and that's a crisis that we have.
Sorry, I don't want to take for granted that people know what digital nomads are. Apologies for jumping in here, Buhle. But digital nomads, essentially, we're talking about people that come in from other parts of the country, quite wealthy, so foreign professionals, some of them in finance, in media, in tech, coming into the country to work remotely for a few months. But then, because they've got quite the budget, they're able to pay 30,000 rand a month, for instance, for a 1-2 bedroom apartment, which prices many out, and you've got property owners really wanting to focus on that market. So what needs to be done? What's the suggestion on what we do about the digital nomad? I mean, can you legislate something there?
Yes, there's a perspective that digital nomads occupy the high end of the property brackets and property market, and we think that oversimplifies the crisis of housing and affordability, and we actually think that there should be a regulation of the private sector. There should be a regulation of the Airbnb and the digital nomad space, because it can't be it can't be that we're losing these many homes. We think there should be a policy that is put in place to regulate it, and for how long should people lease these properties or rent them out for short-term rentals. There should be that kind of regulation that is put in place. But also, we think that there should be some kind of rent control mechanism that is put in place, because what happens is that whilst these digital nomads come through, the price get inflated, and that is visited upon ordinary people that have to bear the brunt of having to pay exorbitant rentals.
Yeah.
And if there's an option of rent control, they don't know that this is where we kept things in terms of people having to pay rentals that is affordable for them. But also we want to say that there should be public land that is released. Public land should, at all materiality, because it is a fundamental question that must be answered. The public land should be released for its social value, and more land should be released to build affordable housing. And on top of that, the state must release what we call an affordable and inclusionary housing policy, so that we're able to regulate the private sector in its entirety in terms of having a social a responsibility of contributing in these developments to affordable housing. Currently, particularly in Cape Town, we are sitting without that affordable housing policy, which then were unable to regulate the private sector in terms of the developments that they build. And that's a crisis, and that's what we need to deal with. We need to regulate the private sector.
Yeah, Buhle, there's so much to talk about, but this is going to obviously be an ongoing discussion, and one that doesn't end very easily. But very interesting when you look at that market in Cape Town. You've got Booi there of Ndifuna saying perhaps what's necessary for the city of Cape Town is a rental cap, right? This is where you cap it. But will investors, certainly property owners, agree to being capped on how much money they can make back in some of those properties, particularly from digital nomads? But that's where we wrap it up. Booi is the head of political organizing and campaigns at Ndifuna. We take a short break. More news on the other side.